Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We are going to talk about the digital transformation and how AZ Rock was able to pioneer the transformation and how it's helping during the pandemic. Digital transformation has been key in a lot of the organization's mind for a period of while. But recent changes with the COVID that definitely puts that in the forefront, the importance of digital transformation and ability to provide virtual customer service. Because one of the thing is a lot of the existing systems, they do the job, but they're not very good at providing the customer service. And a lot of them are siloed as well as paper-based, which makes it very harder to provide excellent customer service and puts the customer at the center of at the center. According to a McKinsey recent survey, public customers are 9 times more likely to trust a government agency if they get a better customer service. But it's a big challenge if you don't have the right systems and the right vision to accomplish that. That was the case with AZ Rock until a couple of years ago. Even before the pandemic, the agency had a great vision to transform themselves so that they can provide better service to the customers. So they embarked on the journey with the Salesforce and licensing solution we built on top of Salesforce to enable the agency and also break the silos within their agency to provide better customer service and citizen experience. And with the recent COVID, they're able to weather the storm and they're able to sustain or even exceed the customer expectation. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Leatham and Jeff Zimmerman to share their story. Jeff, Mr. Leatham, if you can share your vision and how you got started on the journey and where you ended, it will be good.
Awesome. Thank you. And please call me Jeff. That's much, I respond to that much better. Thank you very much, Shrikant, Beth, and Brian Kirby and the MST team for letting us be a part of this, telling our story. We're pretty excited about it. The Arizona legislature established the Register of Contractors in 1931 to issue and maintain contractor licenses, investigate and cite violators, adopt construction standards, educate the public and contractors regarding such standards, rules, and policies, and to assist in dispute resolution. The Register of Contractors licenses over 42,000 construction companies, not individuals, construction companies. Approximately 75% of these companies have less than 5 employees. And we investigate over 7,000 complaints each year. Governor Ducey, my boss, says decades of overreach by government and special interest groups have left burdensome regulations scattered throughout the economy. Our charge is government the speed of business. The Register of Contractors' vision is to be the premier contracting licensing agency, wisely managing our resources and effectively navigating external relationships to further our mission. Esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem. Or you could say it in another way, to be good without concern of how you look. Obviously, that's me. So the mission of the agency is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public through a regulatory system designed to promote quality construction by Arizona contractors. You know, the expectations of many of our citizens that we serve have fundamentally changed. They want the digital access to services anytime, anywhere. Modernize technology, expand self-service operations, continue to reduce red tape. So my background, I'll give you a little thumbnail of what my background is and where my philosophy came from. I grew up in a small family-owned construction business. And when I say small, I mean small. So my father and me, and then when my brother got old enough, it was him. And he was licensed in 1959 in the state of Arizona. However, in the mid-70s, there was a significant construction downturn in Arizona, and I found a temporary position in the consumer products industry that turned into an unplanned 25-year career. I worked for enterprises from Fortune 300 companies to small startups. My customers were the biggest of the big to the small mom and pop corner markets. Part of my success in this business was learning from others, I guarantee you. that first I must know my customer's needs and wants. So at the Rock, I use the Rock a lot, so that's the same as the AZROC. At the Rock, we used my failure lessons. We had to find out how and what our customers wanted and needed. We had to be solutions developers, you might say. The Rock culture in February of 2015 was when I was appointed by Governor Ducey to be the director of the registrar. It was an us versus them culture. License applicants, licensees, and other citizens of the state of Arizona were treated as a burden. I believe we needed to make it easier for all of our customers, 7 million of them, all of our customers outside the walls of our building, no matter how big or small, no matter how hard it was. We began to implement the process changes necessary to deliver the best of the best product. So eventually our timelines improved significantly. I've got a terrific crew. It started to ease the pressure inside the walls of the Rock, less callbacks, fewer complaints up the ladder. That meant less time to resolve and mitigate any problems that we had. However, we were still primarily a brick and mortar operation. If there was a hardworking construction science technology professional that wanted a business, to start a business, to get licensed, the process was cumbersome at best. And I'm sure those who are familiar with it would remember that specifically. Download forms, fill in a form, mail a form, deliver a form, hand deliver, on and on and on. Make a payment by mail, come to the window, all of these things. It took probably over 20% of an applicant's wage earning times to just do this stuff. These people weren't business owners, they were workers, and they had to take a full day out of their time to do this stuff where they weren't earning money. If a homeowner needed to file a complaint, again, paper, paper, paper. You get the idea. So what we did at the Registrar of Contractors, the Rock, we embarked on a mission to provide everything needed to submit an application or file a complaint online. We asked and listened to our customers and developed requirements to meet those needs. We knew Salesforce was a Cadillac platform. It's all over the news. But how do you implement something like that? We heard presentations from companies that assumed what we wanted and tried to convince us that if only we would change our process to fit their product. So our team spent countless hours with a company that looked good. Our Rock department heads, managers, and CSRs provided the requirements necessary to meet our customers' needs. Our people spent days, weeks, months, and hours. But when we started to implement this company, all of a sudden, they present us with a mid-six-figure change order, saying they didn't realize the ROC had a legal department. It's kind of shocking to me, since they had spent over 2 weeks with my department leadership, frontline managers, and lead CSRs. Clearly, they weren't listening, or it didn't matter what we wanted. It only mattered what they had. In other words, they had a product, they needed to sell it. It didn't matter whether we needed it or not. So we terminated immediately. We began looking for another partner that could help us with our mission. During a brainstorming session at our office, somebody mentioned MST Solutions. I had no idea about MST Solutions. I apologize. I didn't know that. So, but the Rock team, we contacted the MST headquarters and we scheduled a meeting with MST. So during the introduction meeting, we went over to their office, we met with their team, we sat around a table. I expressed during the introduction, I discussed the frustrations we'd had with the past solution providers, supposed solution providers, I might add. So, and the MST folks, I was surprised. The MST folks, it hadn't been my experience with many technology people when talking to somebody that's not technically astute. They seemed to listen to what I was saying. After our initial introduction meeting, MST contacted the Rock project coordinators and they scheduled a meeting with the department heads and frontline managers, all on their own cost. I was surprised there. They didn't give us a bill for this at first. They spent time listening to what the Rock team members needed to meet goals to serve our customers. They listened. It was obvious. They asked questions that were pointed to what our team members were saying. From those conversations, MSC returned and presented their proposal and commitment. I got to admit, I had my fingers crossed. I'd been through this road before, but they seemed like the real deal. And guess what? They delivered what they agreed to. Esse quam videre, my friends. If there were bumps, they didn't point fingers or run. They worked toward delivering on their commitment. So here's the deal. Did we engage MST Solutions to tackle the COVID development dilemma? Heck no, we didn't do that. That wasn't even in the plan. Our portal went live before this mess. Our goal wasn't to work remotely. It was simply to serve our customers. This has worked before, this has worked during, and it will continue to work long after the current crisis. There's still glitches and bumps. That happens with any system. Though this appears to be, and what I'm told by my team, this is a completely configurable system. We're able to add solutions as needed and identified. The reason why this works for the ROC is that our team members believed in providing superior customer service, an experience that our customers told us they wanted and needed. And we brought the Salesforce platform into that operation and had the MST Solution team help us achieve our goals as partners. So my colleague, Jeff Zimmerman, is on this call with us. He's much smarter than me, as will be obvious when he first starts sharing. And he'll be discussing the more technical aspects of the ROCs, the Arizona Register of Contractors, ROC Online portal. Thank you so much for letting us share a little bit about our story, and we look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Fleetum. As you heard, that journey at ROC is pretty incredible, and Director Fleetum's always, he shares the truth, right? He said that there was challenges and difficulties, and there always are, but you know, getting through that, the exciting things that happened at the end of that journey is pretty amazing. So I recently saw a survey from the National Association of State CIOs that shows that the priority rankings of those CIOs ranks the digital transformation process as #2 on their priority list, and then cloud transformation is #3. It's really exciting and refreshing to see government organizations now focusing on the customer experience as the example given with ROC. So that's pretty exciting. I'm sure customers are going to appreciate that as well, really changing the perception of government. But prior to that migration to the cloud, ROC was operating from a legacy system as well, like I'm sure a lot of you are. These legacy systems were not conducive to virtual delivery of their services. As mentioned, people had to go to a brick and mortar to get a license Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, very inconvenient, but that's the way it was at that time. The relying on the paper and the manual processes are keeping organizations from being able to improve their customer experience or achieve any efficiencies within their organization. And we've noticed that there's like 3 key reasons why the organizations are not digitizing right now. One of them is cost. Of course, the other one is choices. We heard from customers that licensing application solutions just aren't readily available that make it easy for them to do their job. And I'd say the third one is probably the time and effort it takes to implement one of these solutions. And these are all valid concerns or that they have with this implementation. But with a robust platform like Salesforce and a licensing application then built on top of that platform, these solutions can be rolled out and then built up over time. So even if you're facing budget constraints, you don't have to have an all or nothing proposition. You can use the budget you have now to strategically invest it in a platform and a solution that gives you immediate return, but also is robust enough and configurable that you can allow that functionality to build up over time as you get more funds available and as you learn the system and see other opportunities to improve that process. Jeff, do you mind sharing a little bit about what the compelling reasons were for ROC to move to the cloud solutions, and then what were some of the challenges and benefits of that?
Sure, Brian. Thank you very much. The move to the cloud for us has been a revolution in how we manage our technology department. we had many servers that we had to maintain, and as you know, if you're a technical person online, you had to install the service packs. If they were Windows based, some of the Windows software was no longer supported. You had all the security issues. It was a lot of overhead to maintain that. Now, actually, with the help of MST and then our own team, we've moved everything to the cloud except one server, and we're in the process of doing that. I think it's our domain name server is being moved. So being in the cloud is great, and it allows us to develop and service. My team now is working from home because of the pandemic, and we don't miss a beat. Actually, we're, from a technology point of view, doing quite well, which takes me to another point. Because we have our own instance of Salesforce, and when MST finished our implementation, and by the way, this is really important. Everything was documented, everything was handed off, and it's very simple now for my team to administer and to develop additional apps that go into our e-licensing solution. We found that with previous vendors and previous tools that we used for licensing, we were always held hostage by their developers. And every time we blinked, it was $2,000 or $3,000 or $10,000. And maybe that was worth it, but the world has changed. This week, our team, because we have our own instance and because the system is easily configurable, we've done 4 maintenance items and 1 major change to better meet our customers' needs. So yeah, it's been a good experience. MST was great to work with. I'm not endorsing MST. I'm just saying the truth. It was a great experience. I have a long background in technology, and I kind of know how it works. You know, you get your foot in the door, make your bid, and then make your money off of all the change orders. But that's not the case here. Works great. So yeah, back to you, Shrikant.
Yeah, and
Beth,
Srikant,
okay.
maybe you can share a little bit more about how some of these cloud systems are really enabling agencies or organizations to kind of expand their footprint.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing the details. Definitely, you know, it's not about just the digital transformation, right? But how you approach and how you go about it. It's very important. I think having a platform-centric solution like Salesforce that enables it, right? Basically, it not only gives you the functionality you need right now, but given that it's an open and extensible platform, you can build features and additional things along the way, right? As your requirements change, your legislature changes, or your customer demands change, you can evolve with that. The other thing is, I think with the AZ Rock, one thing really greatly helped is the licensing solution we built on top of Salesforce. So we were able to bring in a lot of the app exchange partners to accelerate the deployment and also provide customized solution, right? So we have the base solution, but we were able to customize quickly to make it their solution, right, from the agency perspective. And also we were able to seamlessly integrate with third parties, you know, with respect to pulling the data from the other agencies and other third parties that can be testing scores, that can be about their company registration details, other stuff, right? So that enabled a single pane from the agency perspective, and also different departments were able to collaborate in the same platform instead of moving between the system or swivel chairs. That greatly improved the efficiency. So that's why I think when you're thinking about future-proofing your solutions, think from a platform perspective, right? Not only just thinking from what it's going to solve today, but can it evolve for the future needs? And also, if you extrapolate that a little bit more from a state level, once you have extensible platforms like Salesforce deployed across the agencies, then you're you're able to exchange data interchangeably, and also you will be able to see the data across the organization or across the agencies quickly as well, right? So that was our big, learnings from the AZ ROC deployment as well, right? How we were able to break the silos, and as Jeff mentioned, they're able to take over the implementation, but at the same time, given that it's open, they were able to hire some people on their side, and they are able to start extending and taking the solution to the next level.
And thank you, Srikanth. And Director Fleetum, I know in one of our earlier conversations, you mentioned how AZ Rock was essentially able to become sort of like this one-stop shop where your customers no longer had to go from place to place to place.
Right. So, and pardon me for my technical friends online. I'll probably be using some terminology that is not technically proper. So, my experience is this: we wanted to have a one-stop shop or a storefront, if you will. So where our customers could come and there was something that was easy for them to navigate. One of the things our licensees have to do is they have to provide certain information from the Arizona Corporation Commission or from their background check folks, from a variety of different folks. And so what they were doing is they were running to all these different agencies. We're a state enterprise. They're running from agency to agency to agency to collect this information to give it back to another agency so they could get this thing that this agency did for them. So one of the things that's a beauty about this is we wanted to learn how to, and after I kept talking, I was talking to my team and going, we got to find stuff to plug into this thing. And they go, that's an API, director. And so we found APIs, and we've set up APIs with a couple other agencies, and we're going to continue to doing it with more and more. So that information flows easily. It's not incumbent upon the applicant. My belief is this: if it's hard for somebody or if it's not working, our system isn't working, it's not our customer's fault, it's our fault. And if it's hard for them to do things, we need to find out reasons. If it's hard for them to do things, it's not their fault. We need to figure out how to do it. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to tie these things together, and there'll be more and more and more as we go into this system. And it's all like Jeff Zimmerman mentioned, it's because it's completely configurable, because we don't have to rely on outside sources to do these things. We just work with our teams, work with our other agencies, and we're able to plug these things in. It is eventually, this is what I believe will happen here. And I get a little evangelical at times, so please bear with me. So the beauty of this is eventually this will turn into, because of this system and this robust platform that we have, we'll be able to have our licensees, our applicants, take exams online electronically. So that means if you're deployed in Afghanistan and you're in some hole in the desert, and that's where you spend most of your day, and you want to be a licensed contractor when you come back, what has to happen today is you have to wait until you come back to where you land here, and then you start this whole process. What it will mean is you're there electronically. You can go online, you can study, you can take your exam, you can fill out your paperwork, you can pay for it. You can do all of those things. So the minute you jump off the plane, you're a licensed construction science technology professional in the state of Arizona. And the same with anybody, whether they're working all day long. But I started thinking about this. We got people that want to be in this business, the business that we do. They're all over the place. Let's make it easy for them to do it. Let's make it easy. And it's been hard on us on a lot of things, but things are moving in the right direction. Call volumes are dropping, all of these other things. But that's why we wanted these APIs to plug in, from DocuSign, from IntelliDocs, and Jeff Zimmerman and Brian Kirby can talk more about those kind of things that happen with this, that are easily plugged into this super robust platform. So I'll get off the box. I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Brian, maybe you can speak a little bit more to that too, just this idea of expanding upon the system over time or building upon it. You're on mute.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's important to remember that the process improvement is a continual process, right? There's no like, we've made it, we're done. And you heard that through what Jeff had shared with that rock journey, right? We started out, they started out with that solution, that base solution with the portal and the back end, and they've added things over time. And you know, the APIs were built in initially. Now they're looking at bringing exams online, but all that is very easily integrated into the solution that they have, because it's a platform is Salesforce, and the application is built on that platform, enables those ongoing process improvements. So what the message we like to send is, it's not an all or nothing proposition, right? You can start, no matter what your budget is today, let's start with that budget. Start with that budget, figure out what the benefits you can do with that budget. And the benefits of having and starting someplace is at a limited scope, maybe if your budget doesn't handle it, is effective change management. When you go from 100% paper, 100% manual processes to a very, very modern current system, sometimes that leap is a lot, and you miss a lot of, and have a lot more bumps and difficulties along the way. But if you don't do it in small logical phases, you can effectively manage that change a lot better, lower the impact on your employees, as well as you know, start learning yourself, like, well, okay, what does this mean? As you saw with Rock's journey, like, oh, we can do this now, and we can do that now. So taking it in those smaller chunks, it has some benefits. You can prove out the concept in the smaller scale. And then most importantly, you can say, look, you gave us X amount of dollars, look what we did with this small amount of money, and it justifies additional budgets in the future. So those are things to think about. You know, it's a little bit of a shift. People are like, okay, I really need all of this, but I only have this budget. What do we do? That's just the facts that we're faced against in this industry. Use what you have effectively, and implement those things in phases. This is where a cloud-based configurable license application built on Salesforce comes into the picture. Your small investment today in a licensing solution built on the Salesforce platform positions you to build out the functionality over time. And a technology you know will be relevant for many years to come, and that's so important as well. We've all seen that scenario play out, where we jump on a solution, and then a short time later, because it's not maintained by the vendors, it then becomes obsolete, and now you're faced with this huge investment all over again. Jeff, and I know Beth will be introducing you, but we talked a little bit earlier about how the Rock used the same strategy of implementing, you know, a core functionality of what you wanted to do, and then identify those other opportunities along the way. You mind sharing that with the Rock journey and how that played out there?
I would love to, Brian. Thank you. I'm learning stuff as I listen to this presentation. I'm digesting that. You know, I just gave you one example. So we built the core functionality. Core functionality was to be able to do license applications online. During the pandemic, there was a little bit of a curveball that was thrown at us, and that was that our testing agency was closed. So what that effectively meant is that people couldn't take the examination in order to qualify for a license. So through an executive order of the governor, we waived license or testing requirements, so you could still get your license, and then you'd have to take the test. That caused a huge change that we had to make in our system, but we were able to do it. And kind of as these things get thrown at us, there's a lot of flexibility there. We now have to track, I don't know, 650 licenses that have this provision on them. The other thing is we're able to now do the integration and implement apps on Salesforce. So Salesforce is our e-licensing application built on Salesforce is the core. On top of that, now we're integrating our phone system into Salesforce, so that when the phone call comes in, the record will pop up. It'll make a record that the call came in or the call went out. That's going to be very, very powerful for us as well, I was going to say as a state agency, but it would be powerful for anybody to have that ability. I don't know, the list goes on. We're doing some GPS, GIS stuff. Yeah, some cool things. That's it. Back to you, Brian. Oh, and Brian, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. So another aspect that's so critical when deciding on a solution is configurability, right? It's vital to be able to quickly adjust to any statutory changes that we're faced with or workflow changes that you want to do. I remember, sorry, I was actually, I don't know if it was clear, I was on the ROC team. I was CIO and Chief of Licensing at ROC. So I was a customer of MST and then I transitioned over. So that might be why some of my language and Director Fleetum referring to me in different roles might be a little confusing, but I wanted to clear that out. I remember when I was still there, something that we saw, the legislatures came down with the statutory change that affected all 107 licenses. And in the legacy system, oh my goodness, that would have taken weeks to address and implement. But because they're on that system, that change is able to be driven in one day and with internal resources. So they didn't have to go out to MST or anybody else. They took care of that change in the agency in just one day. And then of course, you know, those IT folks, well, everybody actually on the phone. Digital security and risk is another aspect to consider when you're looking into a digital solution, right? The Salesforce platform, government cloud, is FedRAMP rated, and access to the actual system, so the application that's built on that, is all profile driven. So you can control who can edit, who can see, who can change, who can do all those functions. So it really helps you keep that locked down. And then another piece that we built into this solution, of course, is protecting PII information for your customers, right? So we're able to mask that information. As mentioned, they license entities, and that everybody in the entity has to sign that application. It's electronic, but they have to see it and then attest to it and sign, right? So it was important, even if you're partners with somebody, you might not necessarily want to share your birth date, your social security, and those things. So we were able to mask some of that PII information to make sure that the customer's information was protected. And there's so it's important to have that configurability and then the data security piece as well.
Yep.
Brian, I know in one of our earlier conversations too, you kind of shared a really compelling story, but I think you'll probably share that a little bit later about a mom and a daughter. But Srikanth, maybe you could talk about kind of what your learnings from the relationship with AZ ROC and some other organizations led you guys to build out.
Yeah, I think Brian covered a lot about, you know, the flexibility and what the solution can provide. But one thing, you know, when we talk about the customer satisfaction, customer experience, you know, Jeff shared, you know, their experience working with us. But one thing we did is, as we talked to a lot of the agencies and who are trying to do digitize the licensing process or even simplify the licensing process, right? We found a lot of commonalities, but also every agency is unique, right? So they wanted to preserve their culture and they want to make sure their citizens are served in the way they want. So we took all that feedback and we kind of developed a platform which more like a building blocks, right? Salesforce itself is a platform, but on top of it, we built a configurable solution so that we have a good head start for any agency who wants to digitize it. But at the same time, they have the flexibility, right? As the things change, as their roadmap changes, they have the flexibility to make these changes. You know, as you know, Brian talked about, whether the security or the workflows or just making it easily configurable, right? Any new license type or existing license types, right? Modifying existing license types and notifications, even simple things like QR code, right? You know, you can just issue a QR code for a license. So if you want to display somewhere, a citizen can go there, just scan that and see whether the particular license is valid or not. So, you know, it's simple things, but at the same time, adding a lot of value from a customer perspective, right? So it was a great journey for us, a lot of learnings, but we were able to create a solid solution, which kind of provides a licensing, inspections, legal, and so on and so forth, right? Integrated with the GIS, so you can plan the routes, so you're not really worried about, and also optimize your resources, right? One big thing is improve the citizen experience, but internally optimize the resourcing so you're not stretching and you're spending more time serving your citizens. That's how we designed the solution, and putting that, the customer, both from an agency perspective or citizen perspective, at the center. Um, yeah, Brian, maybe you can share some more details on the stories, what you learned while we are working with the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. What we really want you to have as a takeaway is how a cloud-based platform like Salesforce, with that application built on top of it, can just provide greater efficiencies for both you and the customers that you serve outside of your walls. It's a benefit on both sides. With Salesforce, you can standardize on that platform and have many applications. Today we're talking about licensing, but it has so many other applications. And what's nice about that, it reduces the silos. From an IT standpoint, you're managing or supporting one platform versus several throughout your agency or even your state. The Salesforce team has a 3 update schedule throughout the year. That way, you're keeping in compliance, your security's up to date, and new capabilities are rolling out that you're able to leverage them with your application that's built on that platform. And then, of course, we talked about the ability to integrate with other systems inside and outside your organization. That's so helpful for that customer experience. Again, and you can implement this over time. Prioritize what you're trying to accomplish. Address the workflows that will provide your best return initially. And start there. Start somewhere. It's an exciting journey. Start there. Start improving that process. Find a solution like Salesforce, an implementation partner that wants to work with you and can help you through that has that actual experience to help you get there. So they're actually part of your team and not just a vendor trying to sell you their solution. And I would like to close with a personal story that really illustrates how the customer experience can make a true difference in people's lives. As I mentioned, I was chief of licensing with the Rock at the time, and I was performing my demo walks. That's where you walk around, talk to customers, your employees, see what's going on, see what's working, what's not working in your processes, right? And I was walking up to the front counter to see what was going up there, and all of a sudden I see this mother and her daughter. The daughter was in her 20s, and they're crying. I'm like, oh boy, what do we have going on here? So I stopped and said, what's going on? And the mom shared with me how she had gone to a private business that charges people $1,500 to $3,000 to help them get through the Rock licensing process, right? This business was created, Director touched on it, how bad it was at the Rock prior to him coming on board, but a business spun up and was making a lot of money helping people get through that process because people were afraid to go in our doors. They were afraid to talk to the Rock. The processes were complicated. The people were very argumentative. And so this business charges a lot of money to do that. What happened was the mom had heard these stories, right? And she's looking $1,500 to $3,000 more. I can't afford that. So she decided to say, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go to the Rock and see what happens. And she explained how nervous and stressed out she was because she's heard all these stories. But when she got into the Rock office and was assisted by our licensing rep up front, she realized how easy the process was and how they would be able to get their license. And more importantly, she shared that it was the dream of her and her daughter to own their own construction business. So that was really exciting to see all that hard work that paid off and that there's people behind these licenses. And that the customer experience can truly make a difference in somebody's lives, as you just heard with that example. And with that, we'll turn that over to Beth, and I think we're going into our questions and answers time.
Yes, thank you. That's such a powerful story to end with. We did get a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is directed at Director Fleetum. They wanted to know if you've shared the success that you guys have experienced with other state agencies here in Arizona, like DES or AZDHS.
So that question's from Margot, right? she's a Salesforce person. So there you go. So anyway, we share this with every agency that wants to talk to us about it. We presented it to several others, what we've done, our portfolio, and because we're part of an enterprise. And that's the way we look at it. At the state of Arizona is an enterprise. Every agency is simply a part of that enterprise. And anybody that wants to talk to us anytime, Jeff Zimmerman, Brian Kirby, from his experience when he was at the agency, will let you know that anybody that wants to talk to us can. One of the things that Jeff Zimmerman mentioned earlier is he is not endorsing MST or Salesforce. We were telling our story. This is what happened for us, to us. And that's going to be what our story is. You know, when we first initially talked, Beth, it was, we're going to tell our story, what it is, and that's what it is. We've been wildly successful, what's happened with the Salesforce platform and what MST helping us implement it. It's been awesome. But that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And it's kind of along those same lines, with the understanding that you guys are building upon the platform and expanding on it over time. How long was that initial kind of implementation period?
So this is what's really interesting. I'm not going to answer this, but what was shocking is how fast, once we knew what we were doing, how fast it was able to implement it. We've done processes in the past where it took months and years to do these things. And I think the person who might be able to answer this, because I think Brian was just with the agency at the time we went live, at the time we went live on this thing. And I think he can tell you that story, how remarkable it was, how quick it was. Now, I'm going to say the reason why it was so quick is, first, my outstanding team, premier team in the, I got the best of the best. But also, Brian will help. Brian will be able to explain how that happened live, how quickly it happened. So.
Yeah, it was about a 9-month implementation. It went a little bit longer, but we had that we ran into the holiday seasons and things like that. So we elected to kind of put it on pause, to not, put undue burden in difficulties during that time. So if you look at overall, it was about 9 months to get that in. Yeah, it was. I saw how great that solution was, what we were able to accomplish, and that's when I didn't want to leave Rock, because I really enjoyed working there and the things we were doing there, but I saw the opportunity to be able to help other agencies reach their goals and objectives. I've done that my whole career, and I was excited to be able to move on and help others achieve their goals as well.
I might add, part of the reason why it took so long is we were tied together in a joint instance, and we decided to pull away into our own instance, if you will. And I can't explain the exact details of it, but everything that we wanted to do had to be approved by somebody else and checked off by somebody else. And so I made the decision based on what the information my team was giving that we were going to stop that. We chopped that off and we moved to our own instance.
And then probably a question for Brian or Srikanth. How, when you talked about this idea of kind of starting with the budget you have, starting where you are, even if it's with one process, how can you start to identify the process you should start with, or the one thing you should start with?
So, just Six Sigma black belt. So the process improvement is kind of my background, right? I love it. I love it. It ties so well into this. So what you want to do is, look at what is most important to your customers, right? Step one. What's causing you the most difficulties? They call it a Pareto Chart in process improvement. Basically, it's taking all your flows and determining which one has the most problems and the biggest impact, and you address those first. So it's just looking at, hey, license, starting with if you have multiple license apps like Rock did, let's find the top 2 or 3, depending on how many you have, and say, okay, start there, and then implement the licensing side, and then start integrating some of the investigations and legal. And so really it's looking at what will have the biggest impact for the least amount of investment. So that's how you approach kind of from a process improvement, as well as something like this. Like, I invest here, I get a really big return, and I help my customers. So it's just looking at those, looking at your overall processes and identifying those areas that you can focus on that would make the biggest impact initially that you can build on over time.
What Jeff Zimmerman would probably have some great stuff to add to that.
Well, you know, the question is where did we start? We were on a legacy system that was no longer supported, and every day that went by was huge risk to the agency that would fail. So that really was the impetus to get off that and to get on a new platform, a new system. And obviously the main thing we do in terms of interaction with customers, well, not the main thing we do, but a big part of what we do is licensing, and that requires a lot of interaction between a customer and the agency.
And another question was, how long did it take to train the staff, and perhaps even customers to, I guess, how was it with that change management process, and how long was it a challenge to train the staff to get them up to speed with using this new system?
Yeah, I want to talk to that because the staff was involved in user acceptance testing. Excuse me. The training wasn't that difficult because they had given a lot of input on how the system would work, and they kind of wrote their training manual and did their training in the process of developing the application. Brian, anything to add to that?
Oh, just that, you know, part of our implementations, we included the MST team included the training in some of those manuals, but Jeff's absolutely right. There's so many benefits to having those frontline people involved in the process. Obviously you don't want them in every meeting, but their involvement, one, they can give you huge insights. They're with the customer every day. So kind of back to your original question that came out, Beth, about how do you prioritize those? Start talking to your people, right? They know, they get the questions every day. But yeah, that's just looking at those things and rolling them out.
Yeah,
I'd like to add something to that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Srikant. In the past, the system that we had before that Jeff Zimmerman was talking about, the legacy system, I happened to be with the agency in the past, and I was there when the legacy system rolled out. And here's the way it worked. Our frontline workers weren't included in decision-making at all. The people that were doing the work considered. And when they had questions or concerns, they were spoken down to, condescendingly accused, and all of these other things. That didn't happen here. And that wasn't going to happen here. That was one of my main motivators. And Srikant, I don't know if you were at the original meeting, but my point was, if I recognized my people being treated as if they were less than, it was over. It didn't matter.
Yep.
So our people were involved from the very beginning because they are the best of the best, and they were treated right. And that's why we have a system that works, because they designed it. The people doing the work designed it, not me, not Jeff Zimmerman, and not Brian Kirby, who was there at the time. They were the guiding lights. They were my 2 Six Sigma black belts, which I was lucky to have with my agency. But that's what we did. Our people worked this. They were they designed the solution, and that's the beauty of it. So, and that's a little more evangelical stuff going on there. So I'll let you go. So.
No, I think that's a great point, Jeff. I think the collaboration between the AZ Rock team and our team made it very seamless, right? From a training perspective, it was much easier. And also all these implementations, we include the user experience person along the way so that whatever we are building, it's easy to use, intuitive, and easy to follow through, right? I think that makes the training not a chore, right? As long as they understand the system and processes, they'll be able to use. I think that's what made the transition fairly simple from the AZ Rock team. But the time they were able to spend, brainstorm the ideas and the processes with us, just made the solution a lot more robust. And also it made them feel it's theirs, right? It's not something we are handing off to them, but it's something they built together with us. So that made the whole transition and change management seamless.
And I would just add to that, the Salesforce library is incredible, right? They have all kinds of the videos. They have just a huge, huge library that you can access as well. So in addition to all these other things that we talked about and shared, you know, the Salesforce resources in that area are just tremendously helpful as well.
And one other question is around investigations, and they mentioned that their agency's mission is 100% compliance enforcement driven. So the deliverables are completed quality legal investigations, and so they were curious how Salesforce really improved investigations for the ROC.
So like I'll talk a little bit about it then, and then I'll let Jeff Zimmerman talk about some of the things we're gonna add in here. And that question is from Larry. Larry, I happened to be an investigator at the ROC years ago. And so as you know, there's certain things that we do. There's things that every investigator, depending on what organization they have to do, that they must do. It might be statute driven, it might be process driven or policy driven. But the beauty about this is all of our information is electronic now and real time. Our investigators have real time information at hand and while they're doing their inspections. Now, we're called investigators. We're not law enforcement. We're not sworn officers. We're an administrative agency. But what I encourage you to do, and what I've noticed is there's a lot of processes that we improved before this. But the beauty about this is it allows this information to be, instead of floating in the ether, whether it be on somebody's notepad or some other program or an Excel spreadsheet that has to be dragged in someplace else, this instantly pulls into the case file. And Jeff Zimmerman has some more details on that. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is to, if you get with Beth your email or contact information, we'll get that with our my assistant director and chief of compliance, Jeff Wills, and he'll chat with you about the absolutes, if that's okay. If you had some ideas about that.
I don't have anything to add. Whoops, I don't have anything to add.
One other question is about the licensing solution that Srikanth mentioned earlier that the team built out as a result of what you guys were seeing. How long does that take to kind of get set up in a new organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, Beth. I think that depends, I would say, right? But typically what we are seeing with other customers is 3 months by the time you have the requirements and we work with you, understand the requirements. It can be faster if you know exactly what you're doing. But sometimes, you know, you need to translate the paper processes into digitization process. We don't want to do like to like porting, right? So we want to make sure it's adding the value to the customers as well as they're breaking the silos. But typical implementation with our solution can be done within the 3 months time period. That's including the pilot as well as the rollout, right? But beyond that, it depends on how complex your requirements are and what kind of other compliance and other needs you have. Brian, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify because there might be some people on here that have seen Salesforce rollouts before and say, there's no way that can happen. So let's back up a little bit. So what we've done at MST is said, you know, licensing is important. There's not a lot of solutions out there. So we sat down and took a look at a lot of different licensing agencies and organizations across the nation and said, what are some core functionalities that every licensing agency needs or organization needs? And so our team has already built and constructed, designed and architected that solution. So we call it the MST Licensing Solution. So that's the core product. And what we can do with that now is you go to a big agency, ROC, or any other example of that. We already have that core functionality built in. So that time's already been invested. So you don't have to worry about that. But what we have done is left room for configuration for your specific workflows. So that's why we're able to do it so much more quickly, because we have that core, the core functionality already built in. And so we're really just focusing on, okay, what do you need to be more effective specifically for your workflows, so we can configure it right for your workflows. And that's one of the reasons when you hear such short abilities to stand something up so quickly. That is the premise behind why we're able to do that.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. So any questions that we had outstanding, we'll be sure to address those directly with you. And then we also we'll be sending out this, the on-demand version of this afterwards, and we'll include a few blog posts that actually Brian has authored that speak to a lot of the kind of the questions that popped up here today. But I want to thank all of our panelists and of course all of the guests, the attendees for tuning in.